Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar about the Amsterdam secondary schools and the lottery procedure. My name is Annabeth van Mameren. Thank you for signing up for this webinar. I see a lot of familiar names. For the ones who don't know me, a bit over 10 years ago I started my business New to NL and I help international families find a school for their children. I advise about both primary and secondary schools. I am married to an American and we have 2 sons. The older one goes to the second year of secondary school and the younger one is now in group 8 of primary school. I know a lot of schools. I've been to more than 18 open days this year and then some other ones in the previous years. But I cannot do this by myself. So that's why I asked my friend Emma to help me out.
Enjoy doing research about education and I like helping people find the right school for their child. And today I'll be manning the chat. So whenever you have an extra question for Annabeth that has to do with the presentation or something else about secondary schools, just please ask in the chat and I will tell Annabeth to explain a bit more. Thank you and have a really good night.
Very happy that Emma is going to help. So let's start. This is the agenda. So first we'll explain about the secondary education system. We'll keep that very short because in November I gave a webinar in which I explained all this more in detail. But just a short recap. And if you don't understand, then maybe look back at November webinar. There's a lot of differences with primary schools, so we also emphasize the biggest differences. Of course, it's different for every child. Some things the secondary schools have in common, so we'll address those, and then a lot of things are different, so that's the next chapter we will talk about. Then we'll zoom in to Amsterdam, so the schools per district and per academic level, the different types of schools, and then the school lottery, which is a whole thing by itself. And we have highlighted some schools. So we'll just to make clear how you can see the differences between the schools. So this is how the different levels compare. So first, after preschool, the children can go to elementary school or primary school, and that is the same for everyone. But then after primary school, there's different levels, so VMBO, HAVO, and VWO, and that is what's important in this case. So I have to mute. Yeah, the last people coming in. So VMBO, it's more vocational education, and that takes 4 years. HAVO takes 5 years, and that is senior general secondary education. And VWO is pre-university education that takes 6 years. You see all those arrows everywhere, and that means that from one level you can move to the next level. And so you're not stuck for the rest of your life at the same level. So after the 4th year of VMBO, when you have your diploma, VMBO-T that is, you can go to HAVO, and then you go to the 4th year. So you do 4 and 5 years of HAVO. Then you can go to HBO, which is University of Applied Sciences, or you can go to VWO to the 5th year, and then after the 6th year, you can go to Research University. You can also go from the 1st year of HBO to Research University. So there's a lot of crossovers. Some people, they have a HAVO diploma and they feel they want to do a vocational job and they go to MBO. So they could have done that after VMBO, but after HAVO is also possible. Or after, with a VWO diploma, you can also go to University of Applied Sciences. So there's a lot of options. It's also good to know that a lot of secondary schools have mixed bridge class, which is brugklas in Dutch. And that means that for the first 1 to 3 years, they combine different levels in the same class. So then a streaming takes place later. So I hope with this it's more clear that there's a lot of options in the Dutch system. If we briefly go through what all those abbreviations mean, because that gets very confusing. So there's different types of VMBO, and the mixed training, the VMBO-G, that's going away. So sometimes you still see that, but it's not an advice anymore. And so the 3 options is more like basic vocational training, framework training, and theoretical training. And after the theoretical training, you can go to the 4th year of HAVO. And after VMBO, you can also go to MBO, which teaches the students, that prepare them for the job market. So there's different sectors that they can choose and specialize in. And for the theoretical track, there's 4 different sectors: so technical, agricultural, economics, and care and welfare. Some schools, instead of VMBO-T, they use the word MAVO. That's actually the old name, but it's still in use a lot. So that's only for VMBO-T and not for the B and the K. And there's different tracks for the B and the K VMBO. So there's a lot of options within each level of education. Then HAVO, so the same as VWO, after the 3rd year, they have to choose a profile. There's 4 different profiles. So one is culture and society. I've put abbreviations in Dutch afterwards. So CNM is cultuur en maatschappij. So then you recognize those profiles. The second one is economics and society. Then there's nature and health, and nature and technology. All schools have to offer those profiles, but sometimes when it's like a school that's really focused on art and culture, it could be that they don't offer the nature and health profile, for example. So that is something to check. But then if you want to become a doctor, maybe you don't go to a culture profile school. So yeah, that's something to look out for as well. For the HAVO, you have to take at least 7 subjects for your final exam. The exams are the same for all schools in the Netherlands. And so you choose your profile, and then with each profile, there's some subjects that are standard within a profile, and then you have some options to choose for other subjects. Dutch and English are always obligatory, and for almost all profiles in HAVO, also some type of math is obligatory, and in VWO you have to take math. But there's different types of math, and one is a bit more difficult than the other one, and one is more statistics, and the next one is more algebra. But they have to take math. And then in VWO, there is 2 different branches, so to speak. You have Atheneum and Gymnasium. So in both cases, you get the VWO diploma. So there's not a separate Gymnasium diploma, for example. The biggest difference is that in Gymnasium, they teach Latin and Ancient Greek on top of the other subjects. So that means 2 extra subjects, also more homework and more hours in school. But it is common that the Gymnasium students, they get fewer hours of English or German or French compared to Atheneum, because they already know how the grammar works, or they with French they already recognize a lot of words from Latin. But this depends on the school. And there are some schools for Atheneum, they have some extra subjects that the gymnasium students don't follow. So for example, at Hyperion School, they have Atheneum and Gymnasium, and then in Atheneum they teach logics or philosophy, and that they don't teach for Gymnasium. So this really depends on the school. But it's good to know that both Atheneum and Gymnasium diplomas give equal access to university. So there's no study for which you have to have a Gymnasium diploma. However, for students who want to become a doctor, it could be beneficial if they know Latin. If you want to become a teacher of Greek and Latin, it's also handy if you have already followed those subjects in Gymnasium. But it is not a requirement, so that's very important to know. And in VWO, they take 8 subjects for their final exam, so 1 more compared to HAVO. So for students who want to move from HAVO to VWO, it is a good idea to already take another subject on top of their HAVO program, or they have to catch up in a different way. So this could make it a bit more difficult for some students. And they choose the same profile as the HAVO students, so one of those 4. Yeah, this is, of course, it doesn't summarize all the professions, but just to give you an idea. So after VMBO, students can go to MBO, and then they get a diploma with which they can become an assistant or secretary or hairdresser, office employee, nurse, childminder. There's, of course, many other professions, but just to give you an idea. So HBO is also called Hogeschool or University of Applied Sciences. And then the graduates can become a teacher or accountant, journalist, art director, engineers, the ING abbreviation, consultant, midwife, artist, pilot. So there's many options. And maybe you're used in your country that you have to have a university diploma to become those, to get those jobs. But here, there's really a distinction between applied sciences and research university. And then universities, also called WO, so wetenschappelijk onderwijs. And then professions you could think of are lawyer, psychologist, doctor, surgeon, specialist, expert, and also like engineer, but then the IR abbreviation. So there's different types of engineer. There's also a lot of people who take some extra diplomas while they are working. So another track is also possible. And for example, there's a nurse who has an MBO diploma, but also a nurse who has an HBO diploma, and then they get a higher function and they can also manage other nurses. So there's a lot of different options within this system as well. I hope it's more clear now, so that you know where this all leads to. Then the differences with the primary school, and that's the stage that most of your children are in now. So very big difference is that currently when they are in group 8, they are the oldest of the school and they're the most experienced and they maybe feel much bigger than the other children. But then they go to secondary school and they are some of the youngest. So that's a very big change. And some schools are really big and then they could really feel small and scared. A lot of schools, they have a separate entrance for the first year students or a separate building even. So that makes it less scary for them. And they, of course, they get introduction and they get help on how to deal with this change. But it's really also change of mindset that they have to get used to. You also see that your child will grow up fast. They go to school by themselves. They have, it's not called play dates anymore, but they go to friends to hang there or something. And so sometimes you don't really know where they are, which is also a bit strange in the beginning. They get very independent, and they hit puberty, so you will get some different answers than you are expecting probably. So a lot of things change in that area. Most secondary schools are also much bigger than primary schools, so yeah, they also have to get used to all those students, all those different floors in the building, different classrooms. So that's a very big change as well. Also, the communication and the relationship for you as a parent changes, because so maybe in primary school, you every now and then you go with your child to the classroom and you talk with the teacher. Those things are not really happening anymore in secondary school, and not really appreciated by your child either, probably. And maybe you now have a WhatsApp group with other parents, and that's not very common at secondary schools anymore either. My son he's in the second year of secondary school, and he goes together with two friends, and I've made a WhatsApp group with the parents of those friends, so we keep each other updated. That's very handy. But the other parents, I really have no idea who they are. Sometimes they make trips, sometimes also abroad, usually not in the first year, but in the fourth year or fifth year is very common to take a trip abroad, and then they don't take parents with them. So it's also a big change. And what's also very different, what they have to get used to, is they have different subjects in secondary school, and they have to carry a lot of books. So some schools, they do everything with iPads or laptops, but for a lot of schools, you still have to bring books, or they do half-half. So maybe textbooks online and workbooks on paper. But in any case, they have to carry a whole bag with a lot of stuff, and if they have to cycle far, that's a challenge. They also have different teachers. Most schools, they have a different teacher for every subject. Some schools combine different subjects, and then they have combined teachers. We'll talk about that a bit more in detail later. And it's also common that the teachers have their own classroom, and then the students, they have to change classrooms after every hour. But some schools, they have, especially for the younger students, that the students stay in a room and the teachers come and find them. Of course, it's different for physical education and art and the labs, for example, but the other subjects, and the teacher finds them. So that also depends on the school. Then, so at the primary school, it's very, they have a start time and an end time, and you know every day what time your child will be home. That's very different in secondary school, because they get a timetable that often changes. Sometimes classes are cancelled for teacher shortage or a sick teacher or some other things that the teacher cannot teach. It also depends a bit on the school how they deal with that. Sometimes they don't say if they don't have any in-between hours for the first year students. So that's something you could look into. And sometimes they have substitute, but there's also shortage of substitute teachers. So in the end, your child will be going to school and coming home at different hours, and so that will be something to get used to as well. And unlike the primary schools, the secondary schools usually have a canteen where the students can buy their food. They can also bring food from home, whatever they want to. And usually in the canteen they have snacks and bread stuff, but usually no hot meals. And
A toasty is a hot meal.
toasty is a hot meal. That's true.
When you're 14.
Yeah, that is very true. It's also common that they go to the nearest Albert Heijn or Turkish bakery or something to find food there. So you will have to negotiate pocket money for your child, probably. Then some schools, they don't allow the first year students to leave the school premises during school hours, but others, they don't have such a rule. Or they say, well, you can go outside, but don't go further than this place. So that's also different. But your child will explore the neighborhood, and you don't really know where they are. So that's be prepared for that. Emma, do you have anything to add? Because you have an older child who already goes to the 4th year.
No, I think you have everything. You've said everything.
Okay.
Maybe well, not really a change, but some schools have an camp in year 1. Others just have a day where the children get to know each other. So that's something you can ask the school as well. If you maybe some parents want their child to go off on camp, and others prefer for their children to just stay a bit closer to home now that they're going to a new school. So that's my child was kind of disappointed that their kennismakingsdag was at Artis of all places. So, and other schools have a week of camp, so that may be a difference as well.
Thank you for that addition. And it's good to know that most secondary schools, they get their students from a lot of primary schools, also because with the lottery that we talk about later, everyone has the same chance. And so the first weeks they will spend on getting to know each other and group dynamics and how does our school work and how do you find your way in the building and all that kind of thing. So they won't drop the children like that, and that's it. So don't be afraid of that. The common things in secondary schools. So there's the obligatory subjects. So we already mentioned the subjects that you can take as for your exam in the profiles. The schools, they have to start with Dutch, English, and then at least another foreign language. And in the first years, they usually have German and French. Some schools, they cannot find German teachers and they, for example, have Spanish, but that also depends on the school. And in VWO exam, you have to take Dutch, English, and another language. So that can be either Greek or Latin for gymnasium. You can drop one, but not both. And then you can keep. So if you don't have Greek and Latin, then you can choose German and French or one of them. So you can drop some, but in the beginning you have to have all the languages. The schools, they decide how many hours they're going to teach per year. Some schools, they, for example, for the first half year, they teach German and the other half year French. So that really depends. But the number of hours that they have to teach per year, that is fixed. So they have a bit of room to make their schedule. Then it is common that the schools give grades for assignments and report cards where you can find all the grades. Some newer schools, they don't give grades, but more like sufficient or excellent. So they don't give numbers, but more description of how your child has performed. And parents can usually see those grades or descriptions in online portal. So common is Magister or Som Today or Cermelo. Sometimes the parents see the grades before the children. Yeah, I know from my son, who's in second year now, that he doesn't really like it when I know the grade before him. So maybe don't tell them yet that you have seen it. So I get automatic message that my son has a new grade, and then I can find it in the we have some today, and then I can also see the average grade, and that's also important to know. 5.5 is the minimum sufficient grade, so it goes from 1 to 10, and 5.5 is in the middle. And sometimes I just learned from my son that there's an app where you can see, you have to type in the grades that you had, and then some bigger tests, they count maybe 3 times, and a smaller test counts 1 time, and then you can put it all in, and then you have to calculate which grade you need to get in order to have a sufficient final grade. So they're very smart to understand what they need to do, the bare minimum to pass. Not everyone is like that, of course, but okay, when we move on, there's also same like in primary school, there's voluntarily parental contribution. Usually it's a bit higher in secondary school, so between 300 and 600 euros. There's some schools ask more. And many schools, they ask the parents to also get a laptop or an iPad for their child. That is not included in the parental contribution, but you can rent it or buy it through the school, and then it's cheaper. And for parents who cannot afford that, there's special arrangements with the municipality, so you should ask the school about that, so that everyone can follow the lessons and do their homework. It's also common for schools that they have a mentor. So usually each class has 1 or 2 mentors, and then they have mentor class, usually 1 or 2 hours per week. And then they talk about how things are going, especially in the beginning. It's very important. And the group dynamics and other things that happen, and also learning how to learn and how to do your homework in an effective way. And the mentor, they are subject teachers. So, for example, a teacher for English, you see them for English class, and then additionally for mentor class. And a few schools, they have personal coaches, so one-on-one time with a personal coach. But that is much less common. It's also common for schools that they have lockers, and especially when they have a lot of books that they have to carry around, and it's very handy to put their books for the afternoon in the locker and only take the books for the morning with them, and then during break time that they switch books. That also depends on the building, how far they have to walk and how much they have to carry with them. It's also common for schools that they organize school parties where they invite the whole school, or when it's a big school, then maybe they say only for the first year or the first 2 years. So that depends. The school party often takes place in another location, so not at the school itself. And it's not obligatory, but can be fun. Maybe in the first year for some students, it's a bit overwhelming, so it really depends on how they take that. And it's also common for schools to have a student council, and they also have a participation council with parents and teachers and students. And those councils, they help the management, and they organize things. So some schools have a bit more active student council than another school. So if your child is interested, then they could see if there's an opening there and if they can help organize things. So those things you will find most likely in the school of your child. But then there's a lot of differences. And it sounds maybe funny, but a school hour can be different than a clock hour. So it's very common for schools that they have a school hour of 45 minutes or 50 or 60 or 70, or a double hour, which means if 1 hour is 45 minutes, then a double hour is 90 minutes. It's also called blokuur, so block hour. Some schools have day parts that they teach for 2.5 hours, mixed class, and then a break, and then another class. So that is very different between the schools. Like I said before, some schools do mostly their work on laptop and iPad, where others have books or a combination of the two. So here it really depends on what your child prefers. They both have pros and cons, I think. Some schools have a bit more classical system that they have every subject separate, and the bit newer schools, they teach in context, so they have projects or modules, and then they combine different subjects around a certain theme. So, for example, the theme is Amsterdam, and then you can teach about the history and the geography and the population and how all those people got in Amsterdam and how the city grew and what kind of professions are there. And you can test the water and analyze that in the lab. And so there's a lot of things that you can do around the theme.
And then write it in English.
And then write in English, yeah, exactly. Or interview some of the citizens in their language. So there's a lot of things you can do around the theme, and then so they don't separate the subjects then. It's also common for schools that have a few hours of subjects at choice. There's different names for that, keuzewerktijd or Daltonuur or M-uur. Doesn't matter really what the name is, but the idea is that the students can decide for a few hours per week what they want to do with their time, but they have to do something. So it cannot be that they just wander around and just go to the supermarket for 2 hours. And so they can choose to do different subjects that they're interested in, or maybe the school offers a choir that they can have rehearsal for, or maybe they feel like, okay, I'm having some issues with math, I don't really understand it, so maybe if I join another math teacher, then I understand their explanation better, and then I suddenly get the math questions. So that is the idea of the subjects at choice that they can do. So all schools are obliged to teach the modern foreign languages, but some go a bit further, that they also give the opportunity to get a Cambridge certificate for English, or Goethe for German, or Delft for French. And that means extra work at a higher level, so it's not for everyone. And I think it's nice when a school can do that, but I talked with some schools about that, and some say, yeah, it requires extra teachers that we don't have, or it's extra money, and then only the parents who can afford that, they can send their children to take those certificates. So there are reasons for schools not to offer that. But you can also do those take those certificates outside of school if you really want to. And with those certificates, you can prove your level of English. It's international qualification. So especially if you want to apply for international job, then it can help. Then the facilities of the schools are very different. Some schools are very big and they have a big sports hall and a lot of extra things, a climbing wall or football field or whatever you can imagine. They also have after school programs that some are much more, they offer much more than others. So top score sports, so most of those sports are free or for a small contribution the students can take extra sports. Or they have a school orchestra or choir, or they teach maybe Chinese or Arabic, for example. And so like in primary school, it's not, the secondary schools, they don't have sports teams that compete against each other. So for those, you still have to go to a sports club outside of school. So those facilities you will not find. And it is also very common that in summertime, or at least when the weather is okay, that they make use of the local football club and they have outside gym there. And then in winter, they go to the school gym, which is usually in the building or in a sports hall close by. So they also make use of things in the municipality. Then the population of the schools can be very different. Because of the lottery, a lot of schools are more mixed than they used to be, but still, some schools are a bit more diverse than others. Especially a lot of schools in the south of Amsterdam, they are very Dutch. And schools in, for example, New West, where a lot of people live with a Turkish and Moroccan background, you will find a lot of students there as well from who live close by. But there's also students who go to other districts. There's no neighborhood priority anymore, so you can apply for any school in any district that you want to. And see what kind of population you feel happy with. Some schools are based on religion. In most cases, they are not really religious anymore, so similar to the primary schools. And so they're more religious in name than in practice, but always ask the school to see what they do and if that works for you or not, if you're not religious yourself. If you choose for a religious school, your child has to take part in all activities that they do with the religion. Maybe they go to church for Christmas, and maybe they discuss about all kinds of religions, and then they have some preference for some religion that can be. But all schools, they have to teach about all world religions, but then in a neutral way. So citizenship is important and understanding the world, that is part of the curriculum. So don't disregard them right away, just see if it works for you or not. And then there's also Islamic school and a Jewish school, and they are more religious than the most Christian schools are in general. Then some schools, they offer only one level. Other schools, they offer multiple levels. So that is a difference. And then some schools, they have a bigger, they maybe offer all levels, but then they only have a few students in VMBO or only a few in VMBO, for example. So that also makes a difference. So that's maybe something good to find out before you choose that school. And then also special needs support, that also varies a lot. All schools must give some type of support to the students, but some maybe have more experience with ADHD or dyslexia or Dutch as a foreign language. than other schools. So that's also important to figure that out before you apply. And some schools, they have a special facility for students who have, for example, autism or other support. And if your child really needs special for the medical situation, personal situation, maybe for family reasons, you can apply for one specific school through the hardship clause. I will mention that later as well. And then you don't need to take part in the lottery if they grant your request. So, if they're, for example, for children who are in a wheelchair, of course, they don't, you don't want them to go to a building with no lift, for example. So for those situations, there's special support. And then there's also special needs schools. So they're specialized schools. Still, they offer all the levels, but then in smaller classes and more support in-house. So that's different schools then.
There's a question about Montessori schools.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that didn't work for a child in primary school. Should they rule out MLA or METIS for secondary school? Is there a big difference between Montessori and regular secondary schools?
Yeah, that's a good question indeed. So there are indeed also Montessori and Dalton schools and Waldorf schools. And so in primary Montessori schools, they combine students of different ages in one class. They do not do that anymore in Montessori secondary schools, so it's only with the same year. What's important, especially in Montessori schools, is the planning. So they have a task that they cut in small pieces, and then you have to make a planning when you are going to finish which task. And then, it depends a bit on the school as well. So some are a bit more Montessori than others, but sometimes they have written tests to see if you have understood everything. But maybe you also have to interview someone and then write down the answers in a sort of report, or you have to make a video in which you show what you have learned and you have applied your new knowledge. And then you have to make the planning when you will finish which task. And of course, you get help with that as well. It's very interesting because this is the first year that there's no priority anymore for students who come from a Montessori primary school. So they don't have priority in Montessori secondary school anymore. The same applies to Dalton and Waldorf. So it is very likely that the Montessori schools get more students who don't come from a Montessori primary school. So they will have to help more with how to make your planning and how to write down when you finish the task and all those things. And the other thing that is different with Montessori schools is that they have this subject as choice. So some of the tasks you can do at your when you want to. But that is not really specific for Montessori because they have that a lot of other schools as well, but then they call it differently. So maybe if you have doubts if your child would be suited at Montessori secondary school, just talk with the school, and they usually have a Montessori coordinator and see what they say, and then most schools, they have some trial classes. So most of the trial classes are still coming up in the coming weeks. So maybe your child can attend such a trial class and then see how if they like that way of teaching or not. So hopefully that helps. And yeah, you never know for sure, of course. So it's a bit of a guess sometimes. I hope that answers that question. Are there any other questions for now?
Well, there was a question about schools that don't offer the Cambridge certificate, or where can a child study to obtain such a certificate if they don't get it in school? I've looked up the British Council, but maybe you know something more.
Yeah, there is language institutes where you can follow courses and then you can conclude them with a certificate for Cambridge or Goethe or Delft. So indeed, the council is a good way to start, or different organizations. But I'm sure that the subject teacher at school will know that as well, and because usually if they have Cambridge English or the other certificates, it's usually in the higher years. So there's still time to figure that out. Another thing that schools are, so some are part of a corporation or a network, or they have specific certificates for like an eco school or a healthy school. Part of this is marketing, I would say. So if you see a logo or a label or something, just ask them, okay, but what do you do in this area? I'm not going to mention all these, but so some schools, they are part of a network and they really are active and they do more. So beta is the science subject, so they maybe compete with other schools in some kind of contest. Or personally, I really like the youth court, and that is where when there's a conflict between students, that some other students, they are trained as a lawyer or judge, and then they have to help solve the situation. When it gets more difficult, then of course the school is involved. But first they try to solve the issues, and they really they take it very seriously, and they learn a lot from that. And I really like that. And when another student suggests a solution, then sometimes it's easier to take than when the teacher says it. So that can be interesting.
You saw this at Berlaag, I think, or
Cartesius has the youth court, and now mixing up. I've already been to more than 18 open days this year and some others last year.
And it's all for you.
And for my own child. But
Still.
Okay. Another interesting thing to mention is Technasium. There's a few schools that have a Technasium department, and there's the focus on research and design. And they work a lot in projects for real companies. So they have to solve a problem that the real company or university or hospital, for example, has. And so they first have to understand the problem, then come up with a solution, then design the solution, and then put it into practice. So it's also a lot of technical things, and they have to build something and they have to design something, and then in the end they have to present the outcome to the company, and in most cases they also really use it. And so that can be interesting. It's an extra challenge on top of usually a VWO or HAVO. A few schools also have Technasium in the VMBO-T track. And so if a child is interested in that, then that could be a good option as well, but you don't have much choice in this case. So there's a lot of corporations between the schools. A lot of schools, they belong to the same school board, and then they also work together in some areas. And some other schools, they are independent and they only have their own school or maybe two schools that belong to the same board. So this is how the picture of Amsterdam looks like. You can see most schools are in the south. So this is all levels combined. And then there's 87 different schools. Some schools, they're spread out over multiple locations. And some new schools, they have started in a bit different areas than south. So in the West, there are a few new schools, or in the East, or in North, or Southeast. And since a few years, also Wees belongs to Amsterdam. And so you can apply for all those schools. It doesn't matter where you live. And I saw one of the questions in the forms was when you live outside of Amsterdam. Yeah, it depends. So in Amstelveen, if you live in Amstelveen, you can choose to apply for the schools in Amstelveen or Amsterdam, not both anymore, because the application period is the same. So it's either Amstelveen or Amsterdam. And if you live in a smaller town and there's no secondary school or no secondary school at the level that your child wants to follow, then you can also apply for Amsterdam. And there is a website, I will show that later, the Schoolkeuze 020 website, and there they explain how that works, because you need a special number to apply with. But so you can apply for schools in Amsterdam as well. Then if we look at different levels, so a lot of schools combine multiple levels, so that this is why this number adds up higher than here, the 87 schools in total. And so it really depends on what you prefer and the final advice that your child will get in a few weeks. And in some schools, they combine different levels in the first year or the first 2 or 3 years, and others, they separate the levels from day one. So all that is different as well. Where it says towards the bottom, tussenvoorziening, those are schools that offer some special needs support. For example, Metis, they have a special class for children who have autism or who are on the spectrum. And then they have a small class and with little distractions, and a teacher comes to them to teach. So that is one of those tussenvoorziening options. And the kopklas, we'll talk about that later, but that is for children after group 8 or group 7 who are very motivated and doing well in school apart from the language. So that's 1 year of intensive Dutch that they can improve their advice that they got from the primary school, and then go to a higher level eventually. So after this 1 year of intensive Dutch, they start at the first year of secondary, but then usually at a higher level than initially advised. And they're spread out over 7 locations throughout the city.
One question, is Berlage in your school list?
In the end,
yeah.
No.
Oh, because someone would like to know a bit more about the world class, which sounds really good, but I couldn't really find much about it when I visited Berlage.
Yeah. They have a special page on the website about the world class. So Berlage is one of the bilingual schools, and the first 3 years they teach almost all subjects in English, but then after the 3rd year they start preparing for the final exam, so then it switches back to Dutch, and that is very important to realize that. And the My World class, they combine the first 3 years you stay in the same class, and then they work more with projects and stronger focus on internationalization. And so it's a less traditional school in that sense. But that's only for the first 3 years, and then you go to the normal department again. And so they started last year with the My World class. So next year they will have 2 classes, so one for the second year and one for the first year students. So it is still pretty new, but yeah, I think it sounds very interesting. But it's more project work than the regular Berlage. So that is something, yeah, your child has to be interested in. We already talked a bit about the different philosophies or concepts. So I've listed here the options that there are. I put Calland Lyceum between brackets because they used to be Dalton School, but now they are not talking about it anymore. So I'm not sure.
Your eyebrows just going up.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Terra Nova is also funny because it used to be the Eiburg College, and then from the 1st of February, they changed names and they became a Montessori school, which I found interesting. Yeah, so the other schools are more stable in that respect. Also interesting is, so Geert Groot is the biggest Waldorf school, and the Kairos Tiener College that is in North, and they have primary school and then the first 3 years of secondary, and then after that you have to go to the Geert Grote for the other years. But then, yeah, they can stay close to home, which is very nice, of course. Then some confusion is always about Denise and Alaska because they offer the IB curriculum, but you have to realize that only in the last 2 years, so year 5 and 6 of VWO, and then they follow the International Baccalaureate program and they teach in English. The other years are in Dutch. And at Denise, they have VMBO-T and HAVO in Dutch, and then VWO year 5 and 6 in English. So there's no VWO in Dutch. So that's also something to be aware of. For Alaska, you can choose to either IB in English or the Dutch VWO in Dutch. So the rest is not IB, so that's very important to realize that. About those schools, we'll talk a bit further later on. Then another difference between the schools is the number of pupils. So on the schoolwijzer website, you can see the number of students per school. The smallest is Kaider, that's a Jewish secondary school. They only have 33 students. And then Calland Lyceum is one of the biggest, and it's more than 1,600. Some schools, they have different buildings. So in the picture, the top right, that is the Finse school, and they have different buildings. So then it may even feel smaller than it is. My older son goes to the top sport class at Calland Lyceum, and there they have a separate entrance for the first year and the second year students, and also their own canteen and their own wing where they have all their classes. So they are at a big school, but they don't really experience it in that way. I'll mute that again. Yeah. And then, so it really depends on the feel that you get for it. And 2 weeks ago, I think I was at the HLZ open day, and after the spring break, they get a new building where they only put the first year students. So they are part of a bigger school, but they really have their own building and their own teachers and their own canteen, and their own life takes place there. So that really gives a different feel than the rest of the school. So there's advantages of bigger schools. They usually have more facilities, also after school things. They have specialized teachers, so not only for the subjects, but also some teachers are maybe more specialized in teaching Dutch to children who don't speak Dutch at home, or special needs or other things they have they're qualified for. Yeah, and then you have to check also the subject choices, because apart from the obligatory subjects, they sometimes add additional subjects that you can choose from. And so bigger schools, they usually have more options. And also for the profiles, so they have to offer all the profiles, but sometimes they have different combinations possible. But it has also to do with the scheduling options, which is difficult for a lot of schools. And often bigger schools, they have more networks or more connections that they take part in, but not always. That's not a rule. And the smaller schools, they're often more personal, and everyone knows everyone else. It's easier to find your way, especially for in the beginning for the first year students. And sometimes they also have smaller classes in smaller schools, but that's not always the case. So that is something to check as well. It is common for a class that they have about 28 students, sometimes a bit more, sometimes less. One big exception to that is Alaska. They combine about 56 students in one big class with 2 teachers, and then so those are subject teachers who teach about a theme, both from their own point of view, and they combine then their subjects in the theme. They don't stay the whole time with this whole class, so they also break down in project groups, or they have self-study, so they don't spend all the time there. But this is really something you have to be aware of when you choose for Alaska. But that is, I haven't seen any other school that does that, right?
No, I don't think so.
No.
But the building is really geared to it as well, with really big classrooms. It's not as if they put 60 kids in a regular sized classroom.
It's really a big classroom, that's true. Yeah.
There were 2 other things now that we had a bit of a break. In the comments, someone says that Cretaceously Same will also launch their Agora. I don't know how to say it. Agora.
Yeah.
Agora.
Plaats.
Yeah. So maybe that's something you can go into if you go back one slide. And the other one is Franca says Alaska only offers IB in the arts, not sciences. So that can
True.
make a difference as well. So maybe it's not like a whole diploma.
Yeah, it's Alaska stands for liberal arts and sciences, and so they have a strong focus on art profile. So you can follow all the profiles there, but if you want IB diploma program, then they don't offer all the subjects. So then it's more the art focus, but not only the art subjects that you can follow there. About Agora, I did mention it here. There's Explore Agora. That is a school in Amsterdam North. And Agora concept, that means square. So it's sort of a living room. You see picture on the left, top left. And yeah, I don't know that much about it, but the idea is, so they still have the same subjects that they have to teach and the same final exams, but it's more loose on when you learn what and how you learn it. And they combine all levels in the first 3 years, so you still have the opportunity to grow and develop yourself and figure out which is the most suited level.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting and really child-friendly in a way.
Yeah.
But problem, I think, is that they haven't produced a graduation class yet. So who knows if the children are actually prepared to do their VMBO-T, HAVO, or even VWO exam.
Yeah.
No one knows yet.
Yeah, and the same is for the plaats. So that's actually sort of school within the Cartesius, so school within a school. They're still setting it up, so they will start next school year. And it's also more with projects and also develop yourself. There's not much there yet, so I found it difficult to really grasp the idea of it, but it can be interesting for some children. They really like that style of learning. But yeah, if you want to see a track record, then you won't find it because, like Emma said, they haven't developed that much yet. So there's a lot of things changing in the world of education. If we look at the gymnasium schools, so there are 5 schools that only offer gymnasium. So there are Barley, Cygnus, Vossius, Ignatius, and the 4th gymnasium. And that means that you have to study Greek and Latin. You can only apply with a VWO advice. A gymnasium advice does not exist, but only VWO. After the 3rd year, you can choose to drop either Latin or Greek if you want to. You cannot drop them both because then you have to leave the school. And most of these schools they've been around for a long time. They are a bit traditional. They really, you can feel the atmosphere of the ancient cultures and languages. The 4th gymnasium and Cygnus, they are newer gymnasiums, so they have a different atmosphere and different population as well, somewhat. But in the end, you get the same diploma, so it doesn't matter which school you attended, really. And then there's 11 schools that offer gymnasium alongside other levels. So I've mentioned them here. And in that case, if gymnasium is too difficult or you don't like Greek or Latin and you are bored with them, then you can drop those languages and then you can stay at the same school in Atheneum. So that can be an advantage. Then there are a few other schools that only offer one level. Most of them are VMBO schools. And there's one HAVO school, HAVO de Hof. There used to be another HAVO school, but they merged in the Metropolis Lyceum. So now they have different levels. And the Amsterdam's Lyceum, they only have Atheneum and Gymnasium. And Hyperion, the same. So all other schools, they have 2 or 3 levels, or sometimes within VMBO they have all those levels combined as well. Then some of the schools, they have a 3-level bridge class, so that means the first year or 2 years or 3 years with 3 levels together in the same class. So then so my older son goes to a 2nd year of HAVO VWO bridge class. And then he gets grades for HAVO and for VWO. And sometimes a test, they have a bit more difficult questions, and there for VWO you can choose to answer them or not. And then at the end of the bridge period, so after the second or the third year, then it is decided which is the best, if it's better to go to HAVO or to VWO. And then they look at the grades, but also at the child's interest and motivation, and how much effort it took them to reach those grades. And they, so it's not a really very clear-cut decision. It depends on some factors. But in that case, the children, they have the opportunity to grow, and if they think that they can reach a higher level than the primary school advised, then I would definitely recommend going into a multi-level bridge class. And but it really depends on the school how they combine that. The Open Scholengemeenschap Bijlmer in Southeast is a very interesting example of this, because for 2 years they have all the levels. So from VMBO, basiskader up to VWO in the same class. And so that's the widest range. And some other schools, they only have VMBO-T and HAVO and VWO. Then there are some schools that have 2 levels for 2 or 3 years. And so that is more and more common for schools to do that. So then the streaming is postponed. Here you can also see the My World class of Berlage that I mentioned here separately. And so especially for children who started to learn Dutch at a later stage, it could be helpful, so they have more time to really master the Dutch language to move on to a higher level. And or with one diploma of one level, they can still move to the next level. So there's a lot of different options here. Then some schools have a profile. So we already talked about TTO, that's the bilingual education. And it is really important that the child speaks Dutch fluently. Otherwise, they won't make the switch in the 4th year, because they've studied everything in English for 3 years, and then they switch to Dutch, and they presume that you know all the words in Dutch already. So even for Dutch students, sometimes this is a shock. So don't make the mistake to think it will be easier for your child if they already speak English, but not fluent Dutch. And I put Denise and Alaska between brackets because Denise is not really bilingual. About 1/3 of the subjects they teach in English, but the rest is in Dutch. And then it's only for the first 3 years. And then, like I said, you have the Dutch diploma track or IB, and that's fully in English, or not not bilingual anymore. That's only last 2 years. Technasium we already talked about, so there's a few schools that offer that. Some schools have a sports profile. My son goes to the top sport class at Calland, and that's really a special program for students who have a top sports status or who passed the sports test. That's what my son did. And then some other schools, so like St. Nicholas, they have a sports class, but that is just for 1 afternoon per week that they practice different sports, which is nice, but it's very different from what my son gets. So you really have to understand what that means, the sports class. Some schools, they have a culture profile. So apart from the regular subjects, they do extra dance or arts or design or
Theater.
Theater, yeah. That's also a big one. And some students have a sports status. There's also students who have who want to go to the conservatorium later, or want to go to the dance academy, and then they can also get a special status at some schools. Then for gifted students, there's often most schools, they say they offer additional challenges for students who are gifted, or they go through the program quicker. It's also more and more possible to take an exam for a subject earlier than the last year. So for example, if you're good in math, then maybe you could already take your math exam in the 5th year instead of the 6th year. Or some schools, they allow that you take some exams for some subjects at a higher level. So VWO, English, but the other subjects at HAVO, for example. And then some schools, they have a special department for gifted students, or they have extra support in that area. So that could be something to look into as well. And the special class at Métis we already talked about. So those are the profiles. In most cases, you will have to specify the profile on the lottery list, and you can also put a school twice. So for example, the regular Nicolaas and then the bilingual Nicolaas on second place, for example. So
But they will need
but then you need another school next to that. We'll talk about the lottery. Yeah.
There's one question about the gifted streams at the schools on your list.
Yeah.
Catherine is asking, could that be negative for non-gifted students? Like, is the focus placed on gifted students, or is everyone welcome?
Yeah, no, everyone is welcome. It's just separate thing that they can offer, so additional to the other subjects and other tracks. So can be beneficial if a student is gifted, but not negative for the other students. Some schools, they are specialty school. So for example, IFCO for arts, or Hubertus and Berghof for culinary and hospitality. They call themselves the most lekker school of Amsterdam. And you have the Media College and Gert van der Veen for music and dance. For these schools, you have to, most cases, you have to take a separate intake, and or you have to bring a portfolio or take a test or something. I saw for IFCO, the intake has already taken place. So, and so how it works is that you do the intake, and then if they approve you, then you will see that school on the lottery list. If you didn't pass the intake, then you will not find the school on your list. So for parents of group 7 pupils, if they're interested in these schools, then around end of January, beginning of February next year, they will have to take part in the intake. And but still, you have to take part in the lottery then, so also put other schools on the list. And then there's a tech school that is a new school, and it's a cooperation between VMBO and MBO vocational tracks, because there's a huge shortage of qualified technicians in Amsterdam. So in this way, they hope to get more people who are specialized in these areas. It's an interesting cooperation, I think. These are the subjects at the school. We already talked about most of them. So for the art, so it's all, they have to teach at least these subjects, but then some schools teach additional subjects. And in some cases, it's possible to take your exams in fine art, for example, or physical education, but that's not at all schools the same. In the end, there's 58 core objectives, so attainment targets that they all have to adhere to, and that the inspection will check if they have done all that. So that is the same for all schools. And then, so some schools, they merge subjects. So I already gave the example of Amsterdam, where different subjects came together and are taught by means of the theme in projects. So these are some examples of schools that merge the subjects. In Dutch, they often talk about projectonderwijs or vakoverstijgend onderwijs. And so what they mean with that is that it's not one subject, but it's umbrella of subjects. And then they often have different tests that combine the different subjects as well. In some cases, the school writes their own method, so they can really align the theme to the books that the students have to study. All these things are usually up to the third year, and then from the fourth year, they switch to separate subjects, because then you choose your profile and then it's not combined subjects anymore. So a lot of these things that you see, keep in mind it's only for the first 3 years. Then there are some schools that have special subjects that other schools don't offer. Few examples, astronomy, so the fourth gymnasium, which is very interesting. I think that they offer that. It's also a new subject for everyone. So yeah, they all have to start from zero, which is also interesting. So the Montessori Lyceum, they do a lot of things with textile arts and fashion, which is pretty unique. Metis has a coder class, so that's one of the 3 profiles that you have to choose. That's for 4 or 5 hours per week. And so it's about coding and programming. And then some schools, they teach Spanish or Russian or Arabic or Chinese, or they have a language by choice, so you can have different languages. In some cases, they require a base level of that language already, so more for native speakers. For others, it is an additional language, so also inquire about that. There's more special subjects, but I just grabbed a few to give you an idea. This is the COP class that I already mentioned. If your child would be interested in COP class, you have to apply before February 17, so that's next week. And they try to match the children with the school that is closer by their home, but that's not always possible. So also be prepared for that. And sometimes they don't have enough places, and then it can be that they require an interview or a test to see which students would benefit most from this. It is a very intensive year, so really a lot of Dutch to bring them to a higher level. They really have to be motivated, and it's not for students who have some special needs or other things that they cannot follow the high speed of the class. So that's something to take into consideration as well. You should not confuse the COP class with ISK, because ISK is a newcomer class at secondary level, and that is for students who have recently moved from abroad, who speak almost no Dutch. And they first go to the newcomer class and then to a regular school when they finish the program there. For the COP class, they really require a good level of Dutch already. So for students who have been for a couple of years in primary school in Dutch already. So that's a big difference. Well, that was about the schools, what they do and don't do. This is the next chapter about the lottery. And this is very Amsterdam specific. Amsterdam is the only city where you have to make such a long list. And how long the list has to be depends on the level that the child got as the advice. So for VMBO basis and kader, so B or K, they have to list 4 schools. For VMBO-T, 6 schools, and for HAVO and VWO, 12 schools. And you put them in order of your preference. It has to be a minimum of these 4 or 6 or 12. So some people asked, I only know 6 schools that I like. Can I put 6 schools on the list? No. Don't do that. Put 12. That's very important. You have to submit a form between March 20 and 31. It's an online platform. You will get the details via the primary school and the link and everything, how that works. And doesn't matter when you apply. So some other pages, they mention March 25. So it's a bit unclear, but at least 31st is the very last day. So there's no preference or anything if you submit the form earlier than the 31st. Maybe don't wait till the very last minute, of course, but everyone will hear the outcome on April the 17th at 3:30 p.m. Through the same ELK platform. Everyone will hear it at the same time. So not earlier than the 17th. There's a foundation, VSA, and that's a group of parents who are, who try to help other parents with this whole procedure. And if something goes wrong, then they're the first ones to try and solve it with the schools or with the umbrella organization. On YouTube, there are some videos by Jan Smit, and he will also explain a lot about how this lottery works. That is all in Dutch, so you need to have some basic understanding. There are still some open days going on. Most of them have already passed, but there are some trial classes. So on this Schoolkeus 020 website, you can find the remaining open days. And if your child is in group 7, then there's sometimes also some trial classes in the end of the year for group 7 pupils. And if your child is in group 7 now, it's also a good idea to already visit some open days if they're still taking place, just to get an idea. Well, there are some terms that you hear a lot in connection with the lottery. First thing is that all students get a lottery number that's completely random, and you only see your lottery number together with the school where your child has been placed, so not before that. And so how it works is that first they look at the children who got child who got number 1. They've submitted a list of 12 schools for HAVO or VWO, or 6 for VMBO-T, or 4 for the other VMBO streams. And of course, they're still placed at the number 1 school. But then at some point, number 1 school is full. And then they look at number 2 on the list. And if there's no place there, at number 3, and so on. And so it can be that a child is placed very low on the list. So you really have to fill out the whole list very carefully. There is placement guarantee. That means that your child will get a place at all one of the schools on your list, starting with the school highest on the list. So the school that you really like best, you have to put at number 1. Then you also hear the word startverbetering. That means literally improvement of the tail. So for the children who got placed at the lowest schools on the list, so 9 to 12, they try to place them higher on the list. And for that reason, they asked the schools that are most oversubscribed to add 4% of their places. And so of the total seats that they can offer. And then they will look at a child with the worst lottery number who got placed at the lowest school on the list, and then they try to put them higher on the list. So with those schools that have been added. So that is what improvement of the tail means. Like I mentioned, some schools, they have multiple profiles. So Metis is a good example. You have to, so there are 3 profiles, Technasium, Codeklas, and Kunst & Co. You can put the school twice on your list. So not 3 times, but twice. In that case, you need a 13th school on your list. So it has to be 12 unique names of schools. So be prepared for that as well. And then, so most schools, they don't have a specific profile. So then they just have the name of the school. But if they have a special profile, then you really have to tick the profile that you're interested in. So don't do this in a rush. Really sit down with your child and make this list very carefully. Once you have submitted it, it's very hard to change. So it has to be right the first time. In the past year, so 2023, 7,779 Group A pupils took part in the lottery, so that's a lot. So yeah, we expect more or less the same for this year. So of all those pupils, a bit over 78% got placed at their number 1 school. Almost 94% got a place in the top 3. And 97, almost 98% in the top 5. So most children are lucky and they get at the school high on the list. Last year there was 1 child who got placed at number 11. Of course, it's a very small percentage, but yeah, when you're that child, then you're really not happy. And no one got placed at number 12, so that's because of the improvement of the tail that worked here. So it's a bit unclear how this year will play out because there's no Montessori or Dalton or Waldorf priority anymore. So last year it was very hard to get a place at, for example, Metis or Spinoza, which is a Dalton school. No one knows how that will play out this year when there's no priority anymore. So you will see a lot of percentages and chances and everything, but yeah, don't focus too much on that because it will be different this year. You must be lucky and you have no control over the number that you get. It's completely random. They don't look at where you live or which primary school your child has attended or any other personal details. It's just a computer system that just allocates the numbers to each child. The hardship clause I talked about earlier. So if there's special circumstances, then you have to arrange that very quickly. up to the 21st of February. And then you, if it's granted, then they will reserve a place for your child at that school. It's only 2% of the available seats that they can allocate for the hardship clause, so it's difficult to get that. You still have to fill out the lottery form, but that's more formality because they need to have the list, otherwise you cannot submit your place. But you will get a place there if they have promised that. Then you will hear about filler schools, and that is really lottery term. And so they're normal schools, but those schools I've pasted an example of the lottery some time ago, but just to give you an idea of how that works. So some schools, they always have some short, they always have not enough places for all the children who apply. And some schools, they have enough availability, and they so if you put that school on the list, then you always get a place there. And so in yellow are the schools that have a smaller chance of getting a place, and in green, they can always place the schools of all the children who apply. This will change because of the priority for Montessori and Dalton and Waldorf. So those numbers are not representative anymore. But the idea is that if you put lower on the list a school that always has availability, at least in the previous years, then chances are very high that you will get a place there. And if you put a school that's always full or has been full, that they will go lower on the list. And in the end, there's no place anymore at any school because you have a bad lottery number and popular schools on your list. So then the placement guarantee kicks in and improvement of the tail kicks in. So that is what they mean with filler schools. So some schools lower on the list that are usually full, but be careful with that because it's no guarantee that the schools that were good filler schools last year are the same this year. And don't put a school on the list that you really don't like, because there is a chance you will end up there. Emma, you are the specialist about the statistics with the lottery. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think that you already mentioned that this year it will be even harder to predict than in other years because the priority for Dalton, Montessori and Vrije School is gone. So who knows, are Montessori parents still choosing Montessori for a secondary school, or are they now thinking, well, now that we don't have priority, we don't have to choose for Montessori anymore. So we have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, in previous years, it was a good option to put MLA or Spinoza on the list. But we don't know if that will still be good filler schools. And yeah, it's kind of hard to explain here in a few minutes. I don't know what's wise. I directed some people to the Dutch education group if they want a more tailored advice. You can also contact Annabeth, of course. But I think it's too much to now say, well, you have VMBO advies, but you want this and don't want that, do this. It's too much for now, especially since it's already a quarter to 10.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so in the end, most children are happy with the school where they got placed, even if it is number 10. After the first disappointment, they usually are fine. So also keep that in mind.
And also, we saw a lot of schools. We saw it for our older children. And I honestly don't think that the schools that just the regular schools, the established schools, there are no bad schools there. And I think that's really important to mention as well. There are no very good schools or very bad schools. It's just, I think wherever you end up, you will get a good education in Amsterdam, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. And it also depends on your priorities and what you find more important. For example, location or extra things that they offer. So what makes a good school is also a very personal situation. I have highlighted some schools. Maybe because of the time, are there any questions so far? So these few schools, I just wanted to show the differences and what they do. Some well-known schools and some lesser-known schools, but
there are some questions still about the tweetalig, the bilingual programs. Someone's asking if some schools revert back to Dutch. And I think it's safe to say that they all go back to Dutch because all the exams are in Dutch. There's no way to take Dutch exams in English. So they will all start preparing for the exams in year 4 and will revert back to Dutch.
Yeah. Yeah, so the bilingual schools are Dutch schools where in the first 3 years, part of the curriculum is taught in English, but after the 3rd year, all the subjects are in Dutch to prepare for the Dutch exams. If you want education in English, you have to go to international school. So that's very clear difference.
Katja is asking for you to share the slides about the schools to save some time, because I think some people it's getting to bedtime.
I will share the slides. Definitely. Yeah.
Maybe if someone in the comments has specific questions about specific schools, we can answer a couple of those.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Not so if any one of you still listening wants to know something about a particular school, maybe Annabeth and I can answer those questions.
And if you think this is enough, then thank you for attending the webinar. I hope you have learned some new things. And if you want some, that I can still show that. So at the end of the presentation, I've added some more info. So the first articles and videos that I have created, and then some other sources where you will find more information in general about the Amsterdam schools or the Dutch schools. And here you see also the Dutch education group on Facebook that Emma mentioned. OCO is organization for parents. They offer free support. So that could be interesting as well. You can, of course, also book a private consult with me in English, and then I'll walk you through all your options, and then we can also talk more about your lottery list and other things you want to know.
Okay, well, we have a few questions in the comments.
Yeah.
One is, are there any schools that are very helpful for dyslexic students that you know of?
I don't think there's specific schools.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
I think they are all supposed to offer support because they all need to be inclusive.
Yeah,
that's the law, but that doesn't mean that some schools aren't better prepared than others. But I can't really think of any schools that are particularly.
What I do know, friend of my son, he goes to Berlage, so bilingual. He is dyslexic, and there was a bit of struggle in the beginning because he gets taught in Dutch and English, so in both languages he is dyslexic. So it took a while for them to really understand what he needed, and then now it goes well. So yeah, if your child goes to bilingual school and is dyslexic, then it's an additional thing to watch out for. Those questions you really have to ask the care coordinator or the special needs coordinator, how they are called at the school, and then just ask them what they could offer your child. And of course, there's also different levels of dyslexia. So do they need someone to read out the test for them, or do they need more time to take a test? So all those things are also very personal.
Yeah, but I think most schools have something in place.
Yeah.
My oldest child is going to a standalone gymnasium, and I know that quite a few of her classmates go to a special classroom, but that sounds kind of horrible. Anyway, a separate classroom where they get more time to take the tests, and where they can just do their work in peace without the classmates already leaving because their time is up. So,
Yeah.
And well, I think that all schools offer at least that extra time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We had another question about Amsterdam's Lyceum and why it's so popular. I already answered my opinion in the chat, but this commenter would like to know your opinion about why Amsterdam's is popular.
Well, it's a very traditional school. I think it's the oldest lyceum of the Netherlands, so that they have Atheneum and Gymnasium. It's a lot about traditions, doing things in a certain way for centuries.
They used to have HAVO though.
Yeah,
until not that long ago.
No,
Yeah.
now it's only VWO indeed. They also have rowing competitions, and they have sort of vacation home. Yeah, somewhere in the east of the Netherlands, where they each class goes there once per year, and so they do a lot of extra things. It's also a matter of taste. When I was there, I felt like it even looked older than my old secondary school. But others, they really like the atmosphere, and it's very clear. So we do things in this way, so very structured, very. So yeah, if that's what you like, then yeah.
Something about Lumion and Collins and their principle, which is kind of a hard question for you to answer since one of your children goes to Collins.
Yeah. Yeah, they have been in the news a lot. Yeah, there's a lot to say about that, but in general, I think it has been presented worse in the media than it is in daily practice. So they had some temporary principles, and that changed often, which is not so good for school, but that's what happened. And then in May, they got a new principal, who is also the principal of Lumion, so they belong to the same school board. And I already mentioned before that Caland used to be Dalton School, and now you cannot find it on the website anymore. The same with, they used to have an art profile, but you cannot find it anymore. So there have been some changes, and some staff members they didn't agree with those changes. In the news, you could read that a lot of their staff has left. Well, it's a big school. They have about 180 staff members. So a few retired, others, they had a temporary project that finished. So in the end, the number of teachers that left because of the principal, that's a few, which always happens with changes. But they could also fill all those vacancies, and they have, as far as I know, they have teachers for all subjects, for all classes, which a lot of schools, they cannot say the same. Yeah, Lumion is a very successful school. It's a pretty new school, but they are always oversubscribed and yeah, always hard to get in. And things after May are more quiet now and more stable. So, and then the inspection, that's another thing to look into, the inspection report. So they gave insufficient grade to Calland, but that's mostly for children who have a special needs program, that they didn't analyze the results properly, or they didn't report everything in a structural way. So they did give the support, but it was not clear how they carried that on from 1 year to the next. And the school is in the US, so they have a lot of children who don't speak Dutch at home. They have a very strong program for the first 3 years for children who need extra Dutch support, but they didn't have this for the higher years. So they have to, carry on with that program for the older students who still need additional Dutch support. So those were the things that they they thought was insufficient. They said the quality of education is okay, and safety at school is everything going well. So, I think the most important things they rated in a positive way, but there's still some things to work on. So you can download the inspection reports. They're all in Dutch, but they give you an indication. So they work with the traffic light system. So red is insufficient, orange is weak, and green is it's okay, sufficient. Sometimes they also say good, so extra level. And most schools, they are rated sufficiently, and if not, then the school gets a program how they have to improve, and then they get revisited by the inspection. And if they still haven't improved, then they could get a fine, or they risk to be closed. So that's very serious. But most schools, they manage to improve, and then they are sufficient again.
Okay. Deborah is saying, I think Geert Grote mentioned special support for dyslexia. So,
Okay.
Just to know. And Catherine is asking about Vierde Gymnasium, where my daughter indeed is. Well, I'm still really happy. I want to say I chose that school. I should, of course, say that my daughter chose this school, but well, I was so into it that I think in the end I made a list of schools that she could choose from. She could say the order in which they were placed, but not really which schools were on the form. But well, that's 4 years ago anyway. So we have 4 years under our belt at Vierde Gymnasium, and well, I can't, of course, compare it to any other middelbare school because this is the only one we know. But I think that compared, maybe that's a good thing to say, that compared to the older gymnasia, so Ignatius, Vossius, and Barleyus, together with Cygnus, I think the Vierde Gymnasium is they have a really young team, which I like. I volunteer there a morning a week in their library, and I always feel really old. But so they're young, they're enthusiastic. The student body is really mixed for a gymnasium, at least. I mean, it should be 50-50 if you look at the Amsterdam statistics. It's not quite that, but it's much better than the most of the outside schools, which I really like. And I think it's nice that they have a couple of special subjects that they actually really teach. So some schools, they all have a nice marketing story about the special things they do, but at Vierde has astronomy in the first 2 years, which is a really nice introduction to the beta subjects that come after. And they have film and drama as exam subjects, and a lot of children actually choose to take these subjects, and they're really serious about it, and they go to festivals to present their work, or they have recitals in theaters for their drama. It's really nice. I like it. And I think, like I said last year, it's one of those schools where they do a lot of hand holding in the first year until the fall break. They have their own classroom, the children, so they don't have to walk all over the school and find their classroom. So they have their own, which they can decorate. And there's a lot of time to still be a child, and I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope that answered some questions, but I don't want to take up all the time about just one school.
Now, what I really like about the Vierde Gymnasium is that they, so with most gymnasium schools, if you didn't have Latin and Greek in the first year, then you cannot switch to a gymnasium school. But since recently, the Vierde Gymnasium, they gave the opportunity to third-year students who come from an Atheneum school, but no Greek and Latin, that they can still move to Vierde Gymnasium. And they get a crash course in either Greek or Latin. They drop the second language, and then they can still take their gymnasium exam. And that is really unique. So they really give a second chance to the students who didn't get gymnasium in the first year.
True.
Any other questions? There's been a lot of information.
I missed anything in the chat. I tried to keep up. No, I think that's good.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. So if there's any other schools you'd like to hear something. Oh yeah, I think I missed something. Wait, there was something about how a pretty classical strict school like Amsterdam's compares to a school like Berlage or Spinoza. If are they so much less strict, or I don't think so, but
some schools are a bit more traditional, a bit more formal. It's a pretty funny question, because so the schools that follow a certain philosophy, they can still be strict and traditional as well. So MLA is a very old Montessori school, and Spinoza Lyceum is a very well-established and old Dalton school. So they can still be traditional and have a different concept in the same way. Some schools, they're really more modern and have a newer concept. So like Alaska, Spinoza 21st, Agora, Explore. So they're really different. But in the end, they all have to teach the same subjects, and they have the same final exams. So after the third year, they will grow a bit more together in the end. But yeah, the first 3 years can be very different. So that really has to suit you.
There's a question about zij-instroom after year 1. So if you, I don't know, for some reason can't continue on your standalone gymnasium school and you need to go to VMBO-T or to HAVO-T, what are your chances of finding a school?
Yeah, that is difficult. Yeah, so in theory you can change schools. In practice, that is often difficult, because especially the schools that were full through the lottery and none of the first year students leaves, then they have no places to offer in the second year. in most schools, it's not really possible to repeat the first year. So maybe go to lower level. So that could be an option. Or some families move and they leave Amsterdam altogether, and then the place opens up. You have to go to the website of the school of your interest and check for their zij-instroom, so a side stream that's called. In most cases, you have to apply around April and fill out a form, and it's different for every school. But often they can only tell you just before the summer vacation if you can get a place there or not. So it's a long period of uncertainty. And then they often give priority to children who came from a school that belongs to the same school board, or children who move from outside of Amsterdam, so they have no school at all. So if your child is already at a school and they don't have to leave, then it's more difficult. Like Emma said, if they go to standalone gymnasium school and that doesn't work anymore and they have to go to a school that's not gymnasium, then yeah, they have a better chance as well. So if you want to change schools, I would really recommend to apply for the side stream procedure at multiple schools, or maybe settle for school that's a bit less popular and still at places after the lottery in the first year. So maybe they still have places in the second year. There's no central procedure like the lottery, so it's a bit, how to say, not very transparent, I think.
No, there's a lot of begging going on. That's the impression I get.
It is
other parents.
It is difficult, and I helped some children from the ISK, so from the newcomer class, find a place at a regular school, and they usually get priority as well because they don't have a regular school yet, so they have to move on. So that is easier than changing between schools in Amsterdam. But so I always recommend, if your child is not happy or if something is not going well, first try and solve it. So talk with the mentor, talk with the teacher, talk with the care coordinator or trust person, or try and solve it. And if it really doesn't work, then try and switch schools.
Yes. I don't see any other questions, so I think that we can just wrap it up now.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for your questions, and thank you for Emma for I saw you typing the whole time. So thank you for answering all those
really
questions.
fun. Thank you all for sticking with us, because it's way past my bedtime anyway. Well, not really bedtime, but yeah. So no, thank you for attending. It was really it was another fun night, and thank you, Annabeth, for asking me again.
Yeah, of course. With pleasure. Next year again?
Of course.
Good night, everyone. And I hope to see you guys either in person or online at one of my services. Bye-bye. Thank you.